terminally ill dad makes a crushing request to his family. John Rain's family had never had an easy go of it. From health problems to family trouble, they'd seen their fair share of struggle. But they always came out the other end a little bit stronger. Then John started experiencing some strange symptoms. When the symptoms didn't go away, he reached out to his doctor. It wasn't encouraging. But John knew he couldn't let the worst news of his life stop him from achieving a huge milestone. So he reached out to his loved ones with one heartbreaking request. In 2020, John's son Blake was looking forward to getting high school over with and moving on to his bright future. The senior didn't know exactly what lay beyond life at West High in Billings, Montana, but he did know his graduation could be complicated. Nobody was more in Blake's corner than his father, John. Despite serious problems of his own, he's always been there for his boy. It was John's greatest pleasure in life, especially since Blake barely made it to his first birthday. Born 5 months premature, Blake had everyone seriously worried. A few doctors on staff doubted whether he'd ever be able to breathe on his own. But John's faith in his son never wavered. Fortunately, Blake's health turned around. He grew up into a happy and healthy boy, and John swelled with pride at the thought of him becoming a man. Of course, life doesn't often go as planned. When Blake reached his teens, John started experiencing unusual symptoms. The 49-year-old hoped they'd go away on their own, but the father only got weaker and weaker. By the time he got an official diagnosis, the outlook was bleak. In 2018, doctors told John he was suffering from terminal brain cancer. He had perhaps 18 months to live, though even that wasn't guaranteed. Like such a good father, John's first thoughts weren't about his own well-being, but about his family's. Without a miracle, he wouldn't be around for most of Blake's adult life. Even Blake's graduation, which the kid was so eagerly awaiting, might be beyond John's reach. He wasn't sure what to do, but someone else was willing to lend a hand. Pam Rudolph, Blake's mom and John's ex-wife, was as heartbroken as anybody about John's diagnosis. Maybe they weren't married anymore, but she and John would always be bonded by their son. Pam treasured that more than anything. With Blake's cooperation, Pam reached out to her ailing ex-husband. He confided his fear about not lasting until their boy's May 2020 graduation. That would be the ultimate defeat in his eyes, but Pam promised him that wouldn't happen. That big moment couldn't be taken away from John, Pam thought, because she and Blake had a big surprise in store. They made arrangements for the loving dad to visit West High that January, ostensibly to meet with their son after an exam. Pam moved fast, getting dozens of friends and family together. Because she'd worked for years as a nurse and knew there was no time to waste in making John's dream a reality. Already on borrowed time, John was confused as he entered the school auditorium. Shaking off the January cold, the father noticed little cards folded on each seat. They explained that a special graduation ceremony was taking place today. John barely had time to process this news before a band started playing. In full cap and gown, Blake strode down the aisle. Tears rolled down John's face. He was getting to see his son graduate from high school. In that very moment, his entire life was perfect. The West High principal handed Blake his diploma with a smile. He pointed out to everyone in attendance that they were recognizing one of the school's brightest students and invited various teachers to say a few words about Blake's achievements. Every compliment filled John's heart with joy. They held his boy's work ethic and character in high regard. If he has to stay late to get something done, he stays late, said one teacher. Another commended him for always treating people with respect. However, Blake wasn't the only star of the ceremony. The principal asked John to stand up, and the proud dad received a huge round of applause. He thanked everyone and made a beeline for his son. The two men embraced in what Blake described as probably the best hug he's ever given me. It was a true sign that they were there for each other, no matter what happened. Unsurprisingly, there wasn't a dry eye in the house when John realized his goal. But there was nothing but hope behind them. Reflecting on the monumental surprise, the father said, "People will make you happy, real happy." Blake knew he would never forget this day. It was a true testament to his courage that he was able to balance growing up and dealing with a medical crisis. Sometimes circumstances can demand so much of teenagers like him. Fortunately, he could take comfort in hearing about other people's miraculous battles. Kaylee Halbert, for instance, wearing her white gown alongside her sister Ashley. They were just 18 and 16 years old, but like Blake, they had a plan. But there they were, standing together in gorgeous wedding dresses with perfectly curled hair and bittersweet expressions. An admittedly unusual sight, it wouldn't take long for those walking by to notice that something huge was missing. Kaylee and Ashley weren't waiting anxiously for their grooms. In fact, for this event, they didn't need grooms at all. We create memories. We recreate them. Why not pre-create a moment? The girl's mother, Nicole, later wrote of the odd event. When the doors to the venue opened and a well-dressed man entered, the guests couldn't help but cheer. The only man the girls wanted to see had arrived, and the pre-created moment could finally begin. But the moment the sisters' father, Jason, arrived was not only filled with smiles, there wasn't a dry eye in the house after all. This groomless event would prove to be more tear-jerking than an actual wedding could ever be. This non-wedding was dedicated to one thing: the traditional father-daughter dance. When Jason saw his girls as brides, it brought to mind their childhood milestones, from their first steps to their first dances. It also reminded him of what he would miss. See, the Halberts didn't hire a photographer and rent out a venue just for kicks. It was a necessity for the sisters, who were told mere months before that the father-daughter dance at their weddings wouldn't just be a long shot, it would be impossible. The whole idea began with a dreaded phone call back in April from Jason's neurosurgeon, who said he had news, urgent news. That was the day we heard brain tumor in the brainstem, Nicole explained on Facebook. The day their world changed. Jason was a superhero during months of chemo and radiation, even when the family received the worst news of all. Your heart stops, you can't hear, your breath becomes shallow, was the heartbreaking way Nicole described the moment they received his bleak diagnosis. He had 2 to 3 months to live. We've raised 2 daddy's girls, and I was about to break their hearts, Nicole wrote. Suddenly, the family was faced with an unanswerable question. How were we supposed to plan out our futures? What immediately came to mind was the girls' future wedding days. This was meant to be one of the most important days of their lives. How would they walk down the aisle and twirl about the dance floor without their father? Nicole's heart was broken. The dreams they had of their daddy walking them down the aisle had come to a screeching halt, she wrote. In seconds, the girls' dreams of dancing in the arms of the first man they ever loved was shattered. But the girls weren't ready to give up. It didn't matter that they were years from getting married. You'll have your dance, Nicole told her daughters. They were in a race against time, and they needed all the help they could get. When the Halbert story spread, dozens of people were quick to offer up their services. The girls borrowed the perfect dresses, and friends volunteered to help with their makeup and hair. All they needed was someone to capture the day forever. Thankfully, a dear friend of Nicole's just happened to be a photographer and was honored to shoot the event. These people didn't just make this happen, they made it perfect, Nicole wrote. There was only one thing left to do: dance. When Jason danced with his daughters, he caught a glimpse of a future he wouldn't get to see. Still, the trio twirled, capturing the moments in their hearts. Sure, some people might have thought this morbid, but the Halberts saw it differently. Bringing their wedding days to life helped them to accept their reality. What we've been doing through this whole journey is trying to find the light among the darkness, Nicole wrote. After all, it's so easy to give in to the darkness. But Nicole believes that pre-creating this one-of-a-kind moment helped transform something tragic into something beautiful. When our girls look back on this chapter, I want them to remember not a journey of death, but a journey of life, she wrote. Forced to fit a lifetime of milestones into mere months, the Halberts hope that anyone who reads their story follows their advice. Take the trip, snap the pictures, eat dessert first, make your days matter. Then Nicole asked her Facebook friends for one last favor. We ask that anyone reading this researches glioblastoma multiforme and leptomeningeal disease, she wrote. Nicole hopes that having more allies in the war against cancer will make pre-creating moments a necessity of the past.